Welcome to EM-SOS 2.0 Workflow Demo. Before we get into the demo itself, let's just get an understanding what is EM-SOS. EM-SOS is an enterprise modeling set of standards that is a unique modeling framework that helps companies quickly implement an effective, customized modeling infrastructure. The benefits of EM-SOS is a robust jumpstart that provides you with 30 critical standards, procedures, templates, forms, metric reports, and data model lifecycle diagrams. It saves you time and money by customizing rather than creating your new set of standards and procedures. It maps to the 5 levels of the DMM, the Data Maturity Model, and it is easy to customize Word documents and HTML or SharePoint. Point to note is the workflow is only available in the SharePoint version. The EM-SOS 2.0 workflow capability is a dashboard that allows you to be able to capture the model's submission process, all the relevant standards that have been adhered to, and ensures that your model is actually effectively being modeled according to best of practices, standards, and procedures as defined by your organization. To understand how the demo is going to be run, we need to understand the 3 different roles that we're going to be using. These are the typical user profiles of a data modeler, a project lead, and a data architect. The data modeler is responsible for designing and submitting a model for review. A project lead is responsible for reviewing a submitted data model to ensure compliance to the project requirements. And a data architect is responsible for reviewing a submitted data model to ensure compliance to the enterprise data modeling standards. Now let's have a look at the out-the-box EM-SOS 2.0 workflow for a model submission process. The data modeler starts the submission workflow. The data modeler then captures the model compliance details. If he has to go back to the model and review it, he has the ability to save the model back, and only when he or she is happy with the model does he submit it for review. The project lead then reviews the model that has been submitted to ensure compliance to the project requirements. If it is compliant, he then can move the workflow on to the data architect. If he or she is not happy with the requirements, it can be passed back to the data modeler, who would then review and amend the model to comply to the project requirements. If it is passed on to the data architect, then the data architect reviews it to make sure it's compliant to the enterprise standards, ensuring that everything is according to the standard data modeling practices within your organization. If he is not happy, he can then pass it back to the data modeler, who then can review, change, amend the model to ensure compliance. If the data architect is satisfied, he then passes it back to the project lead to be able to publish the model, to ensure that the model is being published according to the project requirements. Once it's been published, the workflow is ended. So let's have a look at what a data modeler would do to be able to initialize and start a data model submission workflow. In EM-SOS, they would log in as a user, a data modeler. Then under Forms, you will find the logical data model submission and deliverables workflow. In the workflow, they would then capture the model name. And a date for when it is due to be reviewed. So we're going to say 31st of December 2017. It will auto-populate with the data modeler's name, and if they've got an email address set up, they would use their email address. If they don't have one, they can capture it manually. And a contact phone number, and then select all the relevant tick boxes to say that they've applied and adhered to the relevant standards. At any stage, if they get to a point and they're not certain and they need to go and amend the diagram, the model diagram, to reflect the relevant standards, they can always go back and save their workflow. It will put it into a saved state. You'll see saved requests. And in there, that will be sitting in a draft mode for them to come back and continue. They would then go into the data model, make the amendments or changes they need to do, and then come back to their workflow, and they can reinitialize the workflow. All the existing information that they've captured will be populated, and then they can continue going through the process of selecting all the relevant tick boxes to be reflective of their standards. Important to note that these standards are the out-the-box standards, and this workflow can be customized according to your specific requirements. Please note that they can print the workflow selection or submit it when they are finished, ready to submit. Once they press submit, the workflow will initialize and then go into a status of submitted for review. Now let's switch over to what the project lead would see. A project lead would log into EM-SOS using their own profile. Then they would be able to go to the workflow dashboard, and they will be able to see that there is one model submitted for review. This is the workflow demo that our data modeler created. By entering the workflow demo workflow, they can then review all the information provided by the data modeler. They then can look through it, make sure it all complies to the standards for the project, and that all the project requirements have been captured accordingly in the model. If they're not happy, they can reject it and send it back for review. Once they reject it and send it back for review, they can put a comment in stating why they are rejecting it. And now it will go back to the data modeler to be able to go and review. You will notice that it's actually put in a comment with a date and time when the project lead has reviewed it, and you will see a comment in the actual description under the discussion about the model. Now the data modeler can log back into EM-SOS. They too can go into their workflows and see the status of all the workflows. They can see it's been returned for revision. They can then enter the data model workflow and review the comment, go and amend the model. Once they are satisfied with the amendments of the model, then they are prepared to be able to go and correct any information. They can add new information, reply to the existing comment by the project lead. Now the project lead can log back in again to EM-SOS, navigate to the workflow once again, and once they go back into the workflow, they then can see the comments set by the data modeler, and once they are satisfied that the model complies to the project requirements, they can say complete. So now they've finished reviewing the process and add a comment stating, I have approved the model for the project requirements, and submit. You will now notice that it goes to a completed by project lead and the date and time the project lead completed it. Next up is the data architect's turn to review the model. This time the data architect will go into their workflow dashboard, and then they will see that the review's been completed for the workflow demo. They then can enter the workflow demo information and once again can review all the requirements, make sure it complies to the enterprise standards, and that they are satisfied with what the data modeler has submitted has effectively been reproduced in the model and everything is according to standards. If they're not happy, they can reject it and send a discussion back to the data modeler. If they are satisfied, they approve it, and once they approve it, they will also put in a comment and state, I have approved the model for enterprise standards. And once they submit it, the model has been updated. You can see the workflow states that it's been approved by the data architect, the date and time that it was approved by the data architect. The last and final step of the workflow is the project lead's turn. Once they are satisfied that the project is ready to be published and all the information is available for everybody, they will physically go into their workflow dashboard as well. They will see that this model has been approved, is now waiting to be published. So when they go into the workflow, they will see all the relevant information, see that the data architect has actually approved it, and then they can say publish to publish the model. This now concludes our demo, and should you require any further information, please do not hesitate to reach out to us, and we will endeavor to answer whatever questions you may have. Thank you for watching this demo. Bye.